day, tabletop gamers. My name is LeunameGames, and welcome back to LeunameGames. Today I'm going to teach you how to play the 2 to 4 player worker placement game 5 Tribes by Bruno Cathatla and published by Days of Wonder. In 5 Tribes, every player is a caravan that has crossed into the land of 1001 nights and has arrived at the fabled Sultanate of Nakala, where the old Sultan has just died, and the control for Nakala is now up for grabs. And the Oracle has foretold of strangers who would arrive that would maneuver the tribes of the land to gain influence over the legendary city-state. And that's essentially what you're doing over the course of the game. Over the course of several rounds, you're moving workers around to utilize tiles to hopefully get the most points by collecting resources, or assassinating others, or maybe building and claiming tiles, or summoning djinns. Let's get to the table and let's see what's in the box. Now the setup for the game might look a bit intimidating, but it's actually a pretty simple setup. First things first, you're going to need to take these tiles that make up the game, and you're going to need to lay them out in a 6x5 rectangle. Just an important note, you don't need to make them so close together like I did here. I just did it in order to save space. Then there is a bag filled with meeples of 5 different colors. You're going to shake the bag up and you're going to place 3 meeples out on every tile out there. There's a deck of resources that are included with the game. What you want to do is you want to set this deck out, and then you want to flip 9 cards over to form a line. This is going to represent the market. There's this deck of djinns that you can summon throughout the course of the game. All you got to do to set it up is just simply place 3 out next to the board. Each of these djinns will have a point value on the top right corner, what it costs to use their ability if they have one, because some djinns don't have a cost to use their abilities, and an ability marked with a symbol that they do. For the sake of time, I'm not going to go over what every single one of the djinns do. There's a reference sheet that each of the players get that tells you exactly what they do, but I am going to show 3 of them off because I want you to be able to understand more about how they activate. So first off is this one. This one, and Boaz, is like many of the others, where they just simply give you a special ability for the rest of the game. There's no requirements for it. You don't need to pay anything to activate it. You just get the ability. One's like Ananak, who's my favorite, by the way. Who's a little bit more harder to use because you need to spend either an elder or a helper in order to activate his ability. And then the most expensive ones to use are ones like this one, Civitas, where you have to spend 2 elders or a helper and an elder in order to activate his ability. Make sure then each player gets 1 of the 4 colors that are included in the game. They will then get 8 camels associated with their color, as well as a minaret that matches their color. Now you might notice that the blue player and the pink player will get 3 additional camels and an extra minaret. Those you can set aside for now, because those are only used in a 2-player game. And I am setting up for a 4-player game. Take all the minarets that are being used for the game, shuffle them up, and place them randomly on this bid order track. This is going to determine who goes first in bidding for the round. Give each player 50 gold. It's generally advised that you give them 9 5s and 5 1s. And it's generally suggested that players should keep them face down so that nobody knows exactly how much money they have. Once you give all the players their money, you are ready to begin. Every round is going to start with a bidding phase. Starting with the player who is first in the bid order track, the players are going to bid a certain amount of money in order to determine who goes first on this track. So for instance, in the case of the black player who is going first for bidding, he could decide maybe he wants to bid 5. So what he would do then is he would basically take 5 coins, return it to the bank, and he would place his minaret on the 5 spot on the bid track. That spot is now his, and the only way somebody could go after him or before him is to bid more or less. So for instance, the orange player could decide he really wants to go first because he sees a really good move on the table, so he decides to bid 8. He then takes 8 coins, returns them to the bank, and he is now in the lead. Now, blue player doesn't really care about going first. He's just going to go ahead and just bid nothing. While the pink player doesn't want to go last, so he's going to bid 1. So he pays 1 to the bank, and he goes here. This is now going to be the turn order for the round. Starting with the player who is highest up on the bid track, each player is going to take their turn. First things first, you're going to take your minaret and move it to the first empty spot in the bid order track. This is going to determine who is going to bid for turn order next round. On your turn, there are 3 things you are going to do, and you're going to do them in this order. First, you are going to take all the meeples that are on a tile, and then one by one, you're going to drop them along a path to wherever you want to go. Now, there's a couple important rules when it comes to moving the meeples. First off, you are not allowed to move your meeples diagonally by any means. You're also not allowed to immediately backtrack. Now, there's an exception to that. You are allowed to backtrack on a tile that you've already placed if you have enough meeples that you can create a full loop. For example, I started on this tile, which has 5 meeples on it, so if I wanted to, I could simply drop them along this path, which has enough meeples to go around in a complete circle. The final rule when it comes to moving meeples is that you have to place them in a way so that the final one that you place lands on a square that someone of the same color is already there. So for instance, the move that I just made here would be perfectly fine because the last one I placed was a blue one, and there's already 2 blue workers here. But I would not be able to say, for instance, that I made these moves and then place a yellow one in that square because there's no yellow already there. The color of the final meeple that you placed on the tile is the action type that you're going to activate for that meeple. For instance, the last one that I played was blue, so I'm going to activate all the builders that are on this tile. So when the builder is activated, you count all the builders that are on the tile that you've activated. For instance, in this case, I've activated 3 builders. Now I then count the amount of blue colored tiles that are in all the spaces that are surrounding the tile that you've activated. For example, this spot has 4 tiles surrounding it. So you take the number of blue tiles that are surrounding the tile you've activated times the amount of builders that you have, and you're going to get that many points in terms of coins. So in this case, with this action, I will have gotten 12 points in coins. When you activate a tile using the viziers, you will simply take all the viziers that are on that tile and you get to keep them for yourself. Each of these are going to be worth 1 point at the end of the game, and you'll get an extra 10 points at the end of the game for every player that you have more viziers than. The elders are similar to the viziers, as for each elder that you have at the end of the game, you get 2 points. However, there are certain tiles that will allow you to send these elders back to the bag and allow you to summon a Jinn that you get to keep for the rest of the game. The merchants allow you to gain resources. When you gain resources, you take the amount of merchants that you've obtained, you place them back in the bag, and you take the number of resource cards from the market stash that are closest to the resource deck. So for instance, I activated a tile that had 2 merchants on it, so that would mean that I would get to take the first 2 cards that are closest to the stack. The assassins will allow you to kill other meeples. How this works is when you activate a tile that has assassins on it, you count how many assassins that are on that tile. For instance, if I activated this tile, which had 2 assassins on it, that is the range that I can kill a meeple that's on the board. So in the case of this, I have 2 red meeples, so I can kill a meeple that is up to 2 tiles away in any direction except going diagonal. If you don't like any of the options that are out there for killing the meeple on the board, you can instead choose to use the assassins to kill an elder or a vizier that's in front of another player. When you assassinate a meeple, whether it's on the board or in front of another player, that meeple goes back in the bag. When you're done taking the worker placement action, you then take all the meeples that you used for that action and then put them back in the bag. The last step on your turn is to utilize the tile itself that you've landed on. Each tile has a certain symbol in the corner. that signifies what that tile is supposed to do. The tiles with a red arrow and a palace or a palm tree in the bottom left corner means that you have to place a palm tree or a palace on that space. So if I were to have ended my movement phase on this tile, this has a palace on it, which means I have to place a palace on that tile. Now if I were to have ended my movement here, well, that has a palm tree on it, so that means I have to place a palm tree on that tile. The palm tree and the palace essentially here are decorations for your tiles to make them worth more points. If you activate a tile that has a magic lamp in the corner, then you will be allowed to spend 2 elders or 1 elder and what's called a facker, but I'm just going to call it helper because that is dangerously close to a word that I don't like to say. You can use one of these 2 options to summon a djinn that will work for you. Basically what will happen is that you choose one of the 3 djinns out that's available and basically take it and place it in front of you. That djinn now belongs to you. And lastly, you have these 2. These are markets. The markets will allow you to pay money to acquire resources from the market stash. In order to do this, it really depends on which market that you land on. If you land on a large market, you will be allowed to spend 6 coins to acquire 2 of the 6 resources of your choice from the first 6 options closest to the deck. If you land on a small market, you can spend 3 coins to acquire 1 of the first 3 cards closest to the deck. An important thing to know is that if at any point on your turn you manage to clear the tile of all the meeples that are on it, whether it's through a worker placement action or through an assassination, then you become the owner of that tile. When that happens, you will take one of your camels, you will place it in the bottom right corner to signify that it is now yours, and you will gain the amount of points located in the upper right corner at the end of the game. Once you've done everything that I've stated earlier, your turn is over, and play will then pass to the next player who has bid the highest. Once all the players have taken their turn, the round is over. When the round ends, there's a couple things that are going to happen. You first check to see if there are any djinns that are missing. If there are, you basically just take one and you flip it up to replace it. If all the djinns were still there from the round, then you do nothing. If there were no cards from the market that were missing, you do nothing. But if, for instance, say, some cards were missing, then what you would do is that you would take the rest of the cards that are still there, you would slide them down, and then you would draw new cards to replace them. The next round will then begin. Everyone does the bidding, everyone then takes their turn, and then the cycle repeats. The game ends at the end of the round when one of 2 things happen. Either one player has placed all 8 of their camels out on the board, or if there are no legal moves left. Now keep in mind that if there are no legal moves left and there's still players yet to play, you still have an opportunity to use any elders that you might have collected over the course of the game, or helpers, to invoke and activate the djinns that you might own. At the end of that round, the game is over, and you will tally the final scores. You will then write down all the scores and determine the final scores using this little pad that comes with the game, and whoever has the most points is the winner. In the case of a tie, the players share the victory. And that is all you need to know in order to play 5 Tribes. As always, if you have any questions at all, feel free to leave them in the comments below and I will get to them. Thank you all as always so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. That really means a lot to me. If you like what I do and you want to support me in the future, please feel free to hit subscribe. And I will see you all in the next video. But until next time, see you later! Every turn, everyone is going to simultaneously look at their hand of cards and choose which one of them they want to keep and place it face down in front of them. When everyone has decided on what card they want, they're going to flip them over simultaneously. The rest of the cards are then going to be passed over to the player on your left in the